Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, hope the audio is coming in clear. Do let me know if it isn't, but I think we're going to go ahead and get started, just because it seems like I'm all set, and hopefully everybody else is all set, and we're just going to go ahead and dive on in. Alrighty, so do please let me know if the microphone at any point is not coming through. I would appreciate it. Want to make sure we can all be heard crystal clear. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and get going. We're taking a little old school today. I know that I've been using Canva for the last couple presentations, but we're going to go ahead and take it on back to Google Slides. And we're just going to go ahead and get started. So, real quick, before we fly off into the multiple choice land, what does multiple choice mean to you in like one word? If you had to pick one word, what would be that word? I say multiple choice question. You say, I don't know. What do you say? "50-50." I dig that, yeah. I dig that, Connor. Quick, if you're good at it, yeah. Luck game if you don't know what you're doing. We'll deal guessing, all right. Okay. Feel you there, all right. Cool. I mean, it means different things to different people. But one of the things I hope to do here is that by introducing you guys to the skills, right? By introducing you guys to the skills that the College Board is searching for, maybe we can take some of the guessing out of the game. Hopefully. SAT reading section. That's pretty funny. I sympathize. I empathize. Okay, let's go ahead and just really quick, as we always do before any endeavor, let's really quick just go over the ground rules. Of course, we want to treat each other with respect, want to keep it appropriate, and participate. Of course, it's much more fun when you do. And since I'm literally asking you to answer questions, I sincerely hope this won't be too much of an issue. I hope you came prepared to participate. Now, of course, as you know, on the AP exam, you have 55 multiple choice questions in 50 minutes. Sorry, 55 questions in 55 minutes, which means it comes out to about one question a minute. So I will set the timer from anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes, depending on how long the question is. Okay, but the questions are organized currently into the 5 skills that the College Board assesses you on. And I'll briefly talk about each one of those before we go ahead and break on in. All right. So the thing about the skills that multiple choice questions ask is that they're actually not that different from what we've been doing all year. Or if you're from another school, or if I'm not your teacher, it's probably not that different from what your teacher's been doing all year. A lot of this stuff is under the surface, if you will. So for example, one of the skills that the College Board assesses you on is the identifying and explaining, right? Historical developments and processes. So can you identify a historical development or process that is something that happens over time? Can you do that? If you can, then you will be well equipped for the skill set number 1. Well equipped for skill set number 1. So let's go ahead and take a look at a few questions from skill set number 1, shall we? So here's a picture. Here's a picture question. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on our lovely timer. I'm going to need to move it a little bit, shrink it down, because this is such a relatively small question. I'm going to go ahead and put the timer right there. There we go. Yuri, Queen. Hey, I like Queen too. They're a great band. Appreciate the compliment. Anyway, so let's take those 2.5 minutes, and then when that clock hits 0, then we can go ahead and put your guess in the chat when that clock hits 0. But Don't stress if you're not sure. Sirdom. Sirdom, yeah. I can dig some sirdom. Sir. I like being called sir. It's a nice thing. You know, I got a student this year who transferred from a British school. Always calls me sir. I kind of like that, honestly. Kind of wish more students called me sir. Yeah, we'll hold off for another minute and a half. Is one skill tested more than the other? You know what? I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, I don't know. From what I've seen on AP Classroom, it seems like certain subsets of skills are tested more than others. So, for example, like skill number 1, there's like 1A, which is identify, and then there's 1B, which is to explain, right? So, for example, this one is an identify one, and those identify ones seem to be there a little bit less than like the explain ones. If that answers your question, or at least that's just what I've seen. Couldn't tell you for sure. Cool. Alrighty. So if you think you got it, A, B, C, or D, why don't you go ahead and throw that up in the chat. What do we think? So many smiley faces. Right? Because the D and the semicolon? Okay. Yeah. And the answer is D, right? Now, some people have argued the answer could be A, because manoralism is tied up with feudalism, but manoralism is like the economic side of feudalism, if you will, right? So manoralism is like the economic obligations, whereas feudalism is like the legal and cultural obligations, right? So swearing homage to the king, that would be feudalism. Peasants doing labor for you, that would be manoralism, right? So it's just a little bit of the context there, kind of important. Alrighty. Any questions about this one? Pog champ. I agree, Jahang. Cool. All right. Let's go ahead and take a shot at another identifying question. Now, this one has a lot of text, and I hope it's readable. I was tweaking the font to try to make it readable, because I know there's a lot of it right there. So I'm going to put the 5-minute timer on here. Honestly, I don't know if I can make the screen any bigger. Like, it's kind of about as big as it's going to get. I might actually be able to do one thing, though. I just realized. Well, actually, it's fine. It's all good. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the 5-minute timer. I'm going to adjust it. Drag it on over here. All right. So we'll take a few minutes. Maybe go ahead and read through that one. We're actually going to see this document twice. There's 2 questions. Not one after the other, but there are 2 questions. You know, it's interesting. When I was in college, I had a guy on my sports team whose parents were from Zacatecas. He would often talk about going back to visit there. He said it's a very dry place. Said it's not quite a desert, but it's very dry. What sport did I play? I was a collegiate rower, also sometimes called crew. This guy whose parents were from Zacatecas, he's what we call the coxswain. He's a little guy, sits at the front of the boat and yells at all of us. You have a real love-hate relationship with those guys. You need them. They're the ones that steer the boat. But it's interesting. Yeah, it's a good question. Good question about the ecological impact of colonization. Sometimes people talk about Native Americans like they never modified the environment or never what's the word I'm looking for? They never like deforested anything or did something we would consider ecologically damaging. But that's not fundamentally true. Like there's lots of evidence of Native Americans using the environment to their advantage and modifying it. But that's a good question nonetheless. I don't know. If you got it, you can go ahead and put it in there. I think 2.5 minutes to read it, probably pretty good. So, the ethnic makeup, right? That is the communities living here. This could be evidence for something. So if you look down at that third paragraph, they talk about sort of the cultural makeup of the town, right? Talk about its white European residents, talks about its slave population, using a term we don't really use much anymore in polite speech. And they also talk about the 1,000 plus Native Americans who work all sorts of occupations, right? And so the answer to this one is in fact A, as most people have guessed. I think B is, you could make the case that B is true, but that's about almost 200 years out. And best used, right? So if B is true, but 200 years out, then A would be the better answer. C's not fundamentally true, and D might be true, but I think D applies to Brazil. I don't know if that applies to the I don't know if that applies to Mexico. But anyways, cool. But yeah, so we're going to see this one again, so not to worry. But so both of these, as you kind of noticed, like for example, this one is looking for how this passage is evidence of something. And if you look at the previous one, it was looking for what evidence is shown, what policy, political system is shown here, right? So both of these are asking for how the passages operate as evidence, right? That's what skill number 1 is asking for, right? How these things, developments have shaped these events, right? The evidence, right? Can you identify a historical development, right? Something that happens over time, not something that just happens one time and is like a discrete event. Cool. So let's go ahead and look at skill number 2. So skill number 2 is analyzing sourcing and situation. Now, sourcing and situation, it's a very particular phrasing. Are these AP exam level questions? Yeah. No, they are. They are. Sourcing and situation. Now, we've been doing this all year. If you're in my class, we've been doing this all year. Hopefully your teacher's been doing the same thing if you're in AP World, or really any AP Social Studies class. Right? When we say sourcing, we're talking about the HIP statement stuff, right? Or the CAP statement, or the hippie statement, or the happy statement, whatever your teacher might call it. There's a bunch of different acronyms for it, but we're talking, it's like the author's point of view, purpose, the intended audience, or the context, right? Those first 3 are the sourcing, and the last one is the situation. So basically, these multiple choice questions ask you to identify and then explain those particular things in a primary or a secondary source. Now, the interesting thing is that we actually saw a couple of these on the SAQ this time, on the May 10th exam. We saw a couple of those. So it's not out of the question that you might see more of them on a multiple choice than you would normally. So here is another document, and I hope it's readable. I know it's a lot of text. This one, I'm taking it up to, this is Unit 7. This is from Brazil in the interwar years, from the regime of Getulio Vargas, who is one of the more interesting characters in Brazilian history. Oh, thank you, 1A. Or 1UA? 1UA? It's all good. Now, I don't know if any of you, if any of you are my students, but if you're at Doherty Valley when you get to your senior year, or if you happen to have Mr. Snavely right now for AP World, Mr. Snavely actually taught in Brazil for a long time. Mr. Snavely speaks fluent Portuguese. He lived there for a while. Oh, I didn't even set the timer. I'm an idiot. Oh, I forgot to set the timer. Let's see. There we go. All right, we'll just go down to 2.5 minutes. We'll just go down to 2.5 minutes. But anyways. Mr. Kurabin, maybe we can hold off on the answers just until everyone's had a chance to read the documents and come to their own conclusions. Just because we want to give everyone an opportunity. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Let's see. Did part of it, get cut off? Oh, you're right, it did. No, that's my bad. Yeah, it just says economic policy. So it just says the last two words are economic policies. Liberal economic policies. If you are following along at home with your AMSCO book, then this would be Unit 7.4 if you're following along with your review book. Or if you are looking for corresponding Heinler videos, this would be 7.4. All right. Let's go ahead. If you think you got it, go ahead and throw it in the chat. Let's see what we got. Which of the following best explains the historical significance of the views expressed in the passage? Interesting. So again, note the question is asking about the view, aka the point of view expressed in the passage, right? And lo and behold, the answer is in fact C. That is correct, right? During the Great Depression, many governments around the world took the opportunity to take a role in the lives of their economies. Now, this is pretty different historically speaking, at least for a little bit. You know, when we talk about Unit 5 and Unit 6, the role of states in most cases tends to be a little bit limited, right? But then suddenly the Great Depression comes along and whoa, everyone's getting in on the government economic game. So that's what we see here. We see a change in perspective. All right, let's have a look at the next one, shall we? This one's a picture one, a little bit shorter. And if it's not super clear what is on top of the painting, it's a bunch of numbers that I believe are serial numbers. So I'm going to put on a little 3-minute timer. There we go. Now, if you are following along at home, this would be Unit 9.4. This would be Economics in the Global Age. We'll go down to 1 minute. What's the hardest thing on the AP exam? I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I never took the AP World exam. I only took the AP US and AP Euro one. History ones. The history ones. I actually took my AP Euro exam in a closet, like literally in a broom closet. Because I was the only one taking it. I did get a 5, actually. I even remember the DBQ. It had to do with Queen Elizabeth. There was something about Queen Elizabeth. And then the LEQ was something to do with like inter-European cooperation. But that's a good question. Yeah, what do you guys have the most difficulty with? That's a good question. DBQ on the length, SAQ on the background knowledge. Though I will say with the SAQs, they do tend to, they're pretty close to a lot of the learning objectives. They're like, they hedge pretty close to them. All right, I'm so sorry. We're blowing past the time. What do we got? What do we think? Which of, based on the historical context, which of the following can best be inferred about the primary purpose in creating this painting? B. Yep. No, this is B. That is correct. To offer ironic commentary on the triumph of Western consumerism in communist China. I mean, you hear people occasionally talk about how China's not a communist country anymore. There's some truth to that. I mean, if you've been to China, you can buy almost anything you want there. They freely interact with the rest of the world, not in the way the Soviet Union never did. So, cool. Awesome. So, again, as we've seen in these last two questions, right? This one asking for purpose, this one asking for perspective, right? Skill 2 questions sort of ask about the sourcing and the situation affecting the message of the document, right? So how does the message affect the source? How does the sourcing affect the message? Awesome. So let's have a look at skill 3, right? Now we're not looking at the sourcing anymore. We're just looking at the argument, right? Which means these are the kind of questions that ask you for the evidence, right? They'll ask for what evidence does the author bring up to support their point, right? Or what evidence does the author bring up to counter someone else's point? Or who would disagree with this author, right? So it's asking you to be able to use the material in there in order to answer the question. All right. So here, let's take it on back to Unit 1. We're going to take it back to Unit 1. Vijayanagara, the kingdom in what's now southern India and parts of Sri Lanka. We're going to go ahead and turn on the timer. Go ahead and bust that out. And we'll go down to, we'll just go down to 3 minutes. We'll see. If people are really, it seems like we're knocking them out pretty quick, so let's go down to 3 minutes. But that's a good question. I think, who was it up there that asked? Was it Infamous? Yeah, Infamous. Yeah, that's a good question. What is the hardest part? Fly or go crazy? Yeah. In some respects, the DBQ is actually incredibly easy, just because you don't really have to know much. Like, they give you everything. The document's right there. But on the other hand, you do need at least a little bit of contextualizing evidence, right? Just a little bit. So this goes all the way back. By the way, if you're following along at home, this is 1 point. I want to say this is 1.3. This is South and Southeast Asia. Taking it on back to Unit 1, the politics of South and Southeast Asia. Anybody remember that super long list from the course description of all those states you had to remember? Super long list. If you can remember the Vijayanagara, you're doing well. That's one of them. All right. What do we think? Which of the following best describes a claim? That is an argument that's made in the first paragraph. Some interesting. A lot of people pick D. It's an interesting one. Right? That's interesting. I'm curious. I think I can see why a lot of people picked B. I can see that. And D too. Because they are both mentioned, right? If you look, they're both mentioned there, right? A city of wild animals. They talk about the temple, right? Famed for its sweet beauty. Oh, geez, I got a fan account? Only got 4 streams. I already have a fan account. Shoot. Clearly, I'm doing something right. Next thing you know, I'll be right up there with what's the name of that famous streamer? The really famous one? I forget. It Destiny? Is that his name? The really famous one? Who got like rich doing Twitch or something? XQC. Oh. Oh, there are a lot of famous streamers. Okay. Well, Ludwig, XQC. I'll look them up. I'll get there someday. Anyway, sorry. We're getting way off track here. So, basically, which of these is a claim that's made? And the answer here, even though it actually is genuinely kind of tricky, but the answer is actually A, right? Because wild animals didn't destroy the city, but they are claiming that it has become a city of wild animals as a result of the conquest. And the city was known for its fame and beauty, but not necessarily the temple, right? It says there's a temple there, but it's not necessarily that the temple is known for its beauty, right? And so when we talk about what is actually claimed, that the rulers had constructed, waterworks, and that's true. Good stuff. All right. By the way, if you're curious, because this is actually the temples of Madurai are actually one of the most interesting temple complexes I've ever seen, known as the Hampi complex. There's some really interesting pictures right there. Yeah, so basically for these kinds of questions, one of the things they will ask you is, like, what does it say, right? What is the argument being made? Not necessarily what it says, right? Because it did say that animals were there, and it did say that the city was beautiful, but what is it actually making a claim about? But anyways, yeah, if you're curious what those temples look like, that's what they currently look like. They're really quite beautiful. They're quite pretty. All right, where were we? Okay, so here we are at Zacatecas again. We're going back to Zacatecas, except now it's asking for a historian could best use this passage as evidence, right? What could you use this passage to prove? Right? What kind of argument could you make using this passage? And we'll go ahead and we'll set the 3-minute timer, and we'll go down to 1 minute to let people let it go down. Actually, no, we'll just go to we'll go down to 2 minutes since we've already seen this stimulus. We'll go down to 2. That would be about the amount of time you'd have to work on it on the exam itself. That's the thing about the time. A lot of people freak out about the reading, which is totally understandable. I mean, this would probably take at least a minute to read and really absorb it. But the thing is, after that, you have at least 2 to 3 other questions with the same thing. And a couple of those, you'll probably know them like that. Like, it won't be an issue. So you'll lose a little bit of time at first, but you can make up the time as you go, like, forward. All right. Why don't you go on ahead and what do we think? A, B, C, or D? This one is actually also, I will grant you, this one is very tricky. It's not like immediately apparent what it is. When in doubt, choose C. Hey, that's better than the strategy my math teacher told me when I was a freshman in high school. He told me to look at the clock, because there's always back in the old days. You see, we used to have this thing called an analog clock, which had like 2 hands. Right now, you all got them digital clocks. But anyways, he used to say, look at the analog clock, and wherever the big hand happened to be, whether it's 1 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 9, or 9 to 12, that's what you guessed. So if you had a class that was, if you happened to get all the hard questions in a 15-minute window, you would just guess like A for all of them. But yeah, it is C, right? It is C, which is the creation of new economic elites, right? Since we can see that the Spanish soldiers have control over the silver mines and have dedicated their time to extracting that wealth, right? Anyone remember, by the way, what the new name of that elite group was? The Spanish word. Yeah, peninsulares, yeah. Mestizo would have been the mixed group. So the mestizo refers to someone with European and Indian, Native American heritage. Yeah. Yeah, indigenous and like, it's actually legit pretty trippy. Maybe I can show it sometimes, but there is actually a triangle matrix, and like at each end of the triangle, it's like European, African, Native American, and like where you are on the triangle, there's a name. It's actually legitimately trippy, like how they tried to to chart this whole thing. Anyways, sorry, we're getting off track. Yeah, that is the Casta system. That is correctamundo. Yeah, Bonsai, well, that's actually true. You know, if you literally guessed on and everything, you'd probably get at least 25%, probably even more than that. By the way, if you're curious, this was Zacatecas in 1700 on the left, and this was a photo of Zacatecas taken in, I believe, 1915. And the document does seem to be true. There don't seem to be any trees there. No trees. Kind of the hills do look a little barren. So anyways, all right, let's get skill number 4, right? So now that we've talked a little bit about making claims, right? Oops. Now we've talked a little bit about making claims, right? Skill number 4 is asking you to analyze the context of a very specific development, right? So a historical development being something that's not a discrete one-time event, a development being a process over a long period of time, right? Oh yeah, that church, yeah, used to legitimize power, yeah, probably. I wouldn't be surprised. The Spanish the Spanish usually built the large churches in their regional centers of administration. Yeah, that's absolutely probably correct. Yeah, right. Actually, I didn't even realize it had a second dome back there. That's pretty cool. That's pretty dope. Anyways, sorry, what were we saying? Where was I? Anyways, so what these questions are the kind that ask you to contextualize a historical development. Again, a development being a long process, not something that happens at once. So for example, when the first Ming emperor took the throne in China, that would be a moment, a discrete moment. But the creation of the Ming dynasty, that would be a development, right? That is a process that occurs over time. So it's being able to distinguish these things, kind of important. Anyways, all right, let's give it a shot, shall we? Here are two documents, two clips from two documents. We have the Meiji era Japanese Constitution, and we have the post World War II Japanese Constitution. And they're asking for how the difference in the creation of these two documents, what led to the difference here? Like the process that created these two documents. How did we get here? So let's go down to, we'll just go down to 2 minutes since this is a really short passage. It's kind of trippy. I remember when I was in school, I learned that the U.S. is actually pretty unusual in the fact that we only have our one constitution, whereas most countries have like 4, 5, 6 constitutions. I think France has like 6 or something, historically. It's pretty crazy. We've just changed ours a lot. I think 26 times. Anyways, all right. So, difference between the two constitutions was a result of which of the following? Would it be A, capitalist communist stuff? Would it be B, the Japanese emperor's acceptance of Enlightenment ideas? Would it be C, demilitarization post-World War II? Or would it be D, big anti-war protest in Japan? Okay. It looks like most people seem to think C, and in fact, believe it or not, the answer is C, right? And one of the kind of clues to that, as you can kind of see, is that the second one comes after World War II, right? As long as you know that World War II ends in 1945, you're pretty good. Could be D. Well, you know, it's interesting you say that because the Meiji Constitution, the first one, was actually the result of protest, right? So you have the Meiji Restoration in like 1868, I want to say, right? You have the Meiji Restoration. They overthrow the shogun. They bring Emperor Meiji back. And then it's just like a bunch of like business people and local lords that are running the government, even though the emperor had promised he was going to create a constitution. And then there was this protest movement for like 10 years of like smart people and not so high lords, and they were like, hey, what about that constitution you promised us? Remember the charter oath? You said you were going to give us a constitution. And then finally, a lot of them came together and said, okay, fine. We'll create that constitution. Could D be a distractor? Possibly. Yeah, that could be. It definitely could be. Awesome. So, here is another slightly long one. So we will we'll go ahead and set the timer for this one. Let's just reset. We'll do the 5 minute, and then we'll check in at 2.5 minutes. Also, for those of you that are following along at home, this would be 7. This is a kind of a combination of. Is the date cut off? Oh, I think the date is cut off. Let's see. 1958. That is actually important. Let me put that in the shot. Let's see the date. I'll put that in the chat. Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate that. But yeah, this would be a combination of 7.5 and I think 9. I'm trying to remember the exact one. I think it's 9.6 global cultures, I believe, the very end of the unit. But yeah, this is what we would call a Pan-African conference. This is what we call a Pan-African conference. Oh, okay, I guess we're going. Lay it on me. What do we think? Interesting. A lot of people said D, but I'm curious why D? I mean, anti-colonialism. Yeah, no, that's true. Right? It is talking about the end of empire, right? If you look in that second paragraph. Right? Nothing else makes sense that shows why decolonization happened. That's true, Darkwing. Yeah, that's true. It is after World War II. Yeah, so that's true. No. Yep, sometimes the date can be a big part of that. Right? And actually, I had to trim this a little bit so that it would fit on the screen, but there's a little bit extra at the bottom that talks about making sure that the Russians don't get more influence in Africa. So that would be like a Cold War thing. Because, you know, paranoia about the Russians. Alrighty. So let's really quick touch base with 5, just because we're running out of time and I want to respect your time. So whereas skill number 4 was asking about the context of one historical development or process, skill number 5 is asking about connections between multiple historical developments and processes. So now we're not just talking about a single one. Now we're talking about multiple processes together, right? So multiple long-term events, right? Instead of a discrete event describing a long-term event, now we're talking about 2 long-term events together. So let's go ahead and give her a shot. This is a relatively short one, so we'll put down the 3-minute timer for this one, and we'll just go down to 2 minutes since you guys seem to be knocking it out of the park. Which, by the way, the RLC that is being referenced in this document, that's what it looked like in the 60s. That's what it looks like today. Oh, did I not get the answer to the last question? It was D. My bad. My bad. It was D. My B. But yeah, the Aral Sea. Dried up. One of the sadder accounts of an inland sea. That and Lake Chad in Africa also disappearing is another sad story. Okay, what do we got? Which of the following describes the causes of the development, as in the process that is being described here in the passage? Right? So this is a process, the drying up the Aral Sea. Which process describes why this process is happening? Also, I think this is also Unit 9, if you're following along at home. This is early Unit 9. We're kind of all over the place on this one. Interesting. Nah, it's good. So, it looks like nobody is guessing D. So why... Oh, wait, no, somebody's guessing D. Okay. Dory is lost. Badly. Okay. Why... Well, shoot, why not? Why not just why the one that you picked? Let's just throw it all out there. What do we think? Why the one that we picked? I know, right? Not like this. It's all of them. The call is coming from inside the house. No. As they say in Highlander, there can be only one. But I don't know. Go ahead, tell me. What do you think? Home comes the E. Yeah, no, it's E. It's the mythical E. E. It's the Farquaad E, right? On the meme. President of the Academy of Sciences and Transportation, and is related to sea trade. Some scientists are reacting to people didn't like the sea drying up. Because you said no one picked D. No, I appreciate that you listen so closely. Boost their economy through agriculture. Because scientists technically isn't associated with the government and people need food after the Great Depression, which is important for econ. Well, that's true. Getting rid of the water would help make way for land that you could farm on. I mean, that's all true. Right? Now you're blue. Oh, I see. All are very good rationales, right? And in this one, you do have to know a little bit about Soviet history, although you can eliminate D, right? In part because, or sorry, not D. You can eliminate B because the Great Depression was about 20 years earlier, and the Soviet Union wasn't even really affected by the Great Depression because they weren't participating in the world economy. I mean, can't be affected by a Great Depression if you're not in the world economy, right? Protest against environmental effects of economic development also could be true, although there wasn't a super strong environmental movement in the Soviet Union. And the general kind of Earth Day environmental movement is widely believed to be a product of the 60s and the 70s. So it wouldn't be C. And D also doesn't seem to be quite mentioned anywhere here, right? So the answer is A, and that's in part because they talk about the cotton, right? The growing of cotton will pay for the existing Aral Sea. So the answer is A, although these are all good, logically trying to think through. Yeah, I guess you could say C is the distractor. You could say C is the distractor if you want to. Not so much that they were protesting, we should also we should also be really real here. It's not that they were protesting the disappearance of the Aral Sea because they cared about the Earth. They would protest the disappearance of the Aral Sea because, fish and fishing and all, it had its own economy, right? Which, by the way, if you go to the Aral Sea today, which is in, I think most of it's in Uzbekistan and some of it's in Kazakhstan, you can see rusted out ships, right? They all the ships that were in the Aral Sea are still there. They couldn't move them because the sea just dried up. So there's all these gigantic ships just chilling in the desert, Sounds like a great place to host the next fire festival. It is A. That is correct. That is correct. It's the process of controlling of the government and controlling the economy, right, through government control. Bada bing. Alrighty. Here's a picture one. Here's another picture one. This one's, we're taking it back to, I think this is Unit 6, if I'm not mistaken. I believe this is Unit 6. So we got a painting by a Dutch Lutheran minister living in Jakarta. And on the right, you have his domesticated servant. Domestic servant. And on the left, you have his son. And so the labor here that this woman is providing in this particular sketch is most similar to the labor that somebody would provide in which region? So in other words, the labor system that develops here is similar to a labor system that develops somewhere else. But which one is the most similar? Also, by the way, you might recognize the spinning wheel being used. That's a charkha. That's the traditional South Asian spinning wheel that Gandhi famously used in the famous picture of him when he made his own homespun. BOFA in Unit 4. BOFA. Can't say I know what that is. Is that a acronym? Spinning Jenny, no. This is a hand-powered thing, not a machine-powered thing. Interesting. So we got A, we got D, we got C. Oh wait, no, we do. Yeah, we have C. Okay, yeah, we're all over the board again on this one. That's okay. That's all right. So if you look in the corner, right, you can see this person working in the house. Right? They're clearly not working. This isn't a plantation, right? This isn't a cash crop producing endeavor, right? This is just someone doing domestic labor in a house, right? So we think about slavery in the Caribbean, right, as a system of forced labor. That would be the kind of thing we'd be thinking about, like cash crop production, or sugar cane or anything like that. So it clearly isn't B. Now I think it was Annie Coote said C because serfdom is slavery, and they are both definitely coercive labor systems, or what we might call unfree labor systems. But it isn't C because serfdom is technically different than chattel slavery, right? So it's not B and it's not C, right? And when we think about South America, when we think about forced labor South America, you think of two things, or you should be thinking of like two things. One would again be chattel slavery in Brazil, specifically for sugarcane. But two would be a very particular labor system the Spanish used in South America. That was a improvement in the Spanish eyes of an indigenous labor system. Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Yeah, awesome sauce you got. Yeah, the mita, right? So both of those are labor systems that are for, the Inca had originally designed the mita system, yeah. Instead of paying your taxes in material goods, you paid your taxes in labor. I don't know how I feel about that. Maybe that's actually better. Couldn't tell you for sure. Anyways, so the point is, all of these, in the Caribbean, in Russia, and in South America, these are forms of labor that are predominantly for resource extraction or cash crop production, right? There was much less of that in Africa. In Africa, most slaves were held as a sign of wealth, not because they created wealth, but because they, just by fact of being possessed, were wealth, right? And so this is one of the things we talk about. We talk about slavery within Africa, right? Mostly a sign of wealth. So there was a story about a European who went to visit an African king, and he had this really old slave hanging out with him. And the European guy was like, why do you keep this guy around? He can't do any work for you. And the king was like, I just like having this guy around. He's kind of fun to talk to. Right? So, slavery in Africa, within Africa, right, is more about wealth through possession, not wealth through labor and wealth creation. I think it was Thomas Mann who wrote the book 1491. He talked about how Napoleon, the French leader, went to invade Egypt to take the land, where he said African Napoleon would have gone to Egypt to take Egyptians, like the people. So anyways, yeah, so the answer here is A. It is A, right? Because we're comparing two different processes, right? Slavery developed in one area, slavery developed in another area. Cool. So with that, we are good with the 5 skills. I've got about 5 more questions, though, that we can just go ahead and power through if you'd like, from a variety of the skill sets. So we can just see how well we've internalized. I'm fine to stick around for another, for a little bit longer if you'd like. But that's the core of the review if you want to go. But I'll stick around for a little bit. We can go ahead and do this. Quick review of the skills? Why not? Sure, we can do that. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. Okay. Skill number 1. Oops. Skill number 1, identify and explain developments and processes. In other words, what is this thing that you're looking at, right? Or why does this thing exist, right? What is feudalism? That's what this one is, right? What's feudalism, right? Sorry, I shouldn't say feudalism. Like, which of these is like, which of these options, right, represents this picture? And the answer is feudalism. Number 2, analyzing sourcing and situation. In other words, identifying and or explaining the context, audience, point of view, purpose of a message, right? So what's the purpose of this image, right? Why was this created, right? Or in this case, what perspective is illustrated here? What point of view is here? Okay, and how does it affect the passage? 3, analyzing arguments. In other words, what claim is the author making, right? So in other words, with this particular one about Zacatecas, a historian could pull what evidence out of this, right? How could a historian use evidence from here, right? Skill number 4, context of a development or process. In other words, think about a big development, right? Over time, the building of an empire, the growth of an economic region, ecological change, all things that are very slow over time. What is the context of these events, right? So what's the context for Japan changing its constitution, right? Well, that would be their defeat in World War II, right? That's a process. That's a long process. But what's some context to it? Well, defeat in World War II contributed. And last but not least, as we just did, connecting, right? So we have 2 long processes. Can you connect them? Or can you explain how they're similar and different? Okay. Quick enough for you, I hope? That's longer than when the priest has to explain why Romeo and Juliet are dead at the end of the novel. He says, I'm going to do it quick, and then he takes like 4 pages to do it. Alrighty. Whoops. Doop, doop. Okay. Here we got an image. Here we got a picture. Now again, I think I forgot to tweak the text on this one, so please let me know if it's not readable for some reason. Oh, and there's a little bit cut off at the bottom, but all it says is, it just explains that this is a French territory in the Pacific. So it says text at the bottom. Tahiti, yeah, no, it's a popular vacation destination. You been there, Boss Bassoon? Oh, nice. That's dope. It's a real nice place. It kind of has it has a legendary image in like Western culture because Captain Cook stayed there for a little while. I think right after he discovered Australia, he kind of popped in there. and it was described as paradise. It's one of the first accounts Europeans have of like tropical islands that don't involve like, negative stereotypes of the locals. So, although there was some stereotyping, but oh yeah, I forgot to put the timer on. I'm so sorry. Okay. The airport was its own island. That's dope. So, which of the following best describes a likely purpose for this photograph? Right? Why would they take a picture of the natives of Tahiti on Bastille Day, a very important French holiday? Yeah, this kind of goes to the thing I'm always telling my students, and I sincerely hope if you're not one of my students that your teachers are always telling you, right? That the purpose of something is never to show, right? It's not B, it's D, right? It's yes, D, yes, correct, right? The purpose of taking this photograph is to reassure the French public of the civilizing effect of colonial rule, right? And the people here are purposefully dressed up in French-looking clothing because they want to make clear that, they're loyal to France. They're not thinking about rebelling at all, right? So that's a great example of purpose. And this would be skill 3, by the way. This is skill 3. This is the sourcing and situation. Cool. Alrighty. This is kind of a longish one. Some more text. So I'm going to put we'll put the 3-minute timer on. This one, we're taking this one to 3.4. I believe this is back to Unit 3. Or actually, no, wait, this might be 3.2. This is Unit 3. This one's Unit 3. If you're following along at home. And we'll go down to a minute and 30, and then we'll go ahead and guess. See what we got. All right, what do we got? What do we think? Interesting. Looks like most people are on the B front. So, just also for the record, this is skill number 4, right? This is asking you to contextualize a development, right? Yeah, so, yeah, it's B because it's not forced. Now, that's not to say, so let's talk about change in continuity for a second. This is the Mughal Empire, right? Famous for its tolerance, for the most part, until one very particular ruler. Then it's suddenly not so known for its tolerance, right? So there is something to be said for changing continuity over time, but that's why it would be important to look at the date and which ruler we're talking about, right? Because if this said, instead of Shah Jahan, if this had said Aurangzeb, then D would have been an acceptable answer, right? Not that I even think Aurangzeb would have anything to do with the Upanishads, the Psalms, or the Old Testament. But then it would have been D, right? But because it's not forced, it is in fact B, right? Building support for imperial rule by accommodating religious and ethnic diversity, right? So that's something that the Mughal Empire did. It's something some other empires did too. It's really easy to rule an empire when your subjects don't feel like their fundamental worldview is being oppressed or destroyed, right? Something to think about. Like the Ottoman Empire with its millet system. 35 people? Oh yeah. 35. That's chump change. Let's try 35,000. Then we'll know we made it. Cool. Questions about this one? English subs? Subs? You gotta enable subs. I'll look into it. Yeah, during Aurangzeb's reign, yeah, he was yeah. Aurangzeb was the very devout ruler who believed very strongly in his faith, more so than his predecessors' policies of tolerance. That's just how he looked at things. He saw the world very differently. What was I going to say? The Crash Course people, the John Green Crash Course, did actually a really good job kind of comparing like Akbar and Aurangzeb in one of their videos. It's like dope. It's actually a really good video. I don't always like Crash Course, but that one was good. Anyways, all right. Okay. We got a Spanish soldier talking about Incan roads. Oh, wait. Yeah. The sub thing. Yes, I remember. I was reading about this. Going through the Twitch user agreement. Yeah. When did the Mughal Empire fall? That's a good question. I mean, officially, it was abolished in 1857, and the last emperor was sent into exile. But, I mean, effectively, it was gone by the early 1800s. At that point, the Mughal emperor was literally just living in his palace in Delhi, and he was getting a pension from the East India Company. Oh, you gotta get a certain number of viewers. Yeah, I mean, hey. Yeah, no, you could. Yeah, Anikut, that's true. Yeah, like you could make the case. There's historically speaking, we like to talk in generalities, right? De facto, de jure. Like, when is something effectively gone or officially gone, right? Kind of just a point of terminology. 75 partners for 5 affiliate. Oh, 75 for an affiliate. Oh, you need to stream for a certain amount of time. Yeah, I see some of these streamers doing like 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. That's a lot. That's a lot of time to be sitting in a chair. Even a kind of comfy chair like this one. That's a lot of time. I can look into that, Anacoop. Interesting. Well, we're gonna do a long one tomorrow. But anyways, so sorry. Let's go ahead and if you think you got this one, go ahead and lay it on me, right? What is the following piece of evidence that most strongly supports the author's argument about the quality? The quality, right? Just think about the Emperor's New Groove meme, where he's like doing the I don't even know what it's called, but the quality sign, right? Let's see, B B B B B B B B B D D B FBB lock. What's that? Well, it's cool, whatever it is. B. Interesting. More B. Yeah, D does kind of look like it could be, right? Their construction was supervised by government officials, right? Assigning Indians to help build the road. In this way, the roads are built in a short time from one boundary of the kingdom to the other. D is definitely meant to be the distractor ones, right? In this case, it seems there were many roads throughout the kingdom. That's true. Yeah, there were roads throughout the kingdom. That's correct. Now, again, I've been showing this question to students all year. I really don't like this question. I think it's very poorly phrased because technically the answer, according to the College Board people here, the answer is B. They were very broad and they extended across the empire. Yeah, right. That's the thing that he likes to focus on. Now, he also mentions that they're supervised. He also mentions that there are lots of them, right? But he only says, he talks about how wide and broad they are, right? In the first part, he talks about as broad and as good as they are. My only guess would be, Awesome Sauce, my guess would be that that's because most European roads were puny by the standards of the Incan Empire. Like the last time Europe had major roads was the Roman Empire, which by the time of this document had almost been 1,000 years. Yeah, Eco, the FRQ is just the SAQ and the DBQ. That's correct, yeah. Like I said, to be fair, I don't personally like this one. I think the phrasing is really weird, but in the end, I think, and maybe this is a good thing to keep in mind, if it's asking for described in the passage, look for the one that's described in the passage, right? Broad and extended across the entire kingdom, as it says, word for word. Shaking from nervousness, deep breaths. I know that sounds cliche, but it really helps to breathe. If you have one of those, what do you call them? What do you call them? The fidget thingies. I've used those in the past. They can be really helpful. Or if you're by yourself and you can just click a pen. It does say they were inspectors, but I don't know if that necessarily speaks to the quality. Yeah, like I said, I don't particularly like this one question. I think it's kind of a bad one. Let's go back and talk about the discourse, shall we? Not the discord, but the discourse. Let's talk about a guy named Emile Césaire. Talking about colonialism. We'll go down to, let's just go down to 2 minutes since this one is pretty short. Remembering the names of people? I mean, flashcards tend to help with that. I mean, I would say flashcards. I think, if you go on the Freemanpedia, I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with the Freemanpedia site. I know my students are. I post this stuff. Oh, yeah, what does D say? Sorry, D is cut off. Interest. It says interest. Interest. Let me put that. Anyways, the to answer your question, Nicky Picky 222122 is Freeman on his website. Every unit he has a list of people that you ought to know. It's pretty basic. It's not like a super extensive list. It's just like, who do you know in unit 5? Well, you should probably know Simon Bolivar and Tupac Amaru and George Washington and Napoleon Bonaparte. Just the real basics. Let's see. We got interpretation of the nature of pre-colonial societies is most directly by which of the following. So let's see. A lot of go-between. We got C, we got B. A lot of CB debate, right? The answer is B, in part because his description, if you read it, the description of the colonial societies is not a social Darwinist thing, right? So the answer is B. Now, Emile Césaire, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, was part of the French Communist Party for almost 30 years. But even if you don't know that, maybe it wasn't 30 years, but anyways, for a really long time. But even if you don't know that, Like, even if you didn't know that, right? What does he say about the pre-colonial societies, right? They were communal societies, never societies for the few. They were societies that were not only pre-capitalist but anti-capitalist. That sounds pretty Marxist to me. That sounds pretty communist to me. That sounds pretty communist. But anyways, yeah, so that's why the answer is B. But yeah. I'm curious why so many people thought it was C, though. Because it doesn't, just reading through it, it doesn't make it sound like he's describing survival of the fittest. Never trusting C. Yeah, no, C has destroyed your faith. The C. B gang now. Yep, no, totally. Oh, Annie Coot. Yeah, if you go to Freemanpedia, he has a list of people at the end of each unit. Cool. I think I got one more on here. I think we got one more. Yep. All right. Here's the treaty. We'll end with the treaty. We'll end with the peace treaty between the Jamaica Maroons and the British government in Jamaica. Oh, darn. I keep getting everything cut off here. Magistrate. Okay, it says magistrate. 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 Which is basically like the local judge. It's kind of an English term. We don't really use it in the U.S. Same way our judges don't wear powdered wigs. But theirs do. If it's much cleaner than the other streams, that's probably because I'm on a new system. My brother actually built me a computer over the weekend, which he was going to do for a long time. We've been talking about it for months now, but he finally got all the parts together and built it up for me. Oh yeah, no, he bought the parts and built it by hand. That's what he does. Is it a gaming PC? Well, it couldn't run Cyberpunk, but it could game. It can game a little bit. Like it could run Fortnite. I'd rather play PUBG, but it could run Fortnite. Expensive? Yeah, a computer's never going to be like, computer's never going to be cheap. You pay good money, you get a good product. Plus, he just likes building computers. He's been doing it for a long time now. I believe, which one? The graphics unit? It's an NVIDIA. I don't have the exact name with me, though. Let me see if I can find it. I know it's on a document somewhere here. Anyway, sorry. I want to make sure we're not taking the time of people who are got things to do. So, what do we think, right? Actions of the Maroons that forced the British colonists to create a treaty can be seen as evidence of which of the following processes, right? Which of the following processes, right? Why is it? What's contextualizing this very particular development? Why, in fact, yes, it is D. It is, in fact, D, right? Increasing state power. It is, in fact, D. Now, it's true that people might make the argument, you could try to say A, right? Because epidemic diseases contributed to the fact that, for example, individuals of African descent were brought to the Caribbean in the first place as laborers, right? But in this case, it's describing a revolt, and play it safe. Attempts to hold power lead to revolt, right? Anybody, any Star Wars fans here? Remember Princess Leia's famous words to Admiral Tarkin, right? Or yeah, it was Tarkin. Yeah, she said, "The tighter you grip the star systems, the more of them will slip through your fingers." So yeah, power brings a challenge, which I think Vision said in Avengers Civil War. Oh, we're just racking them up tonight. Awesome. Okay. That is, I believe, all we got. That's all I got here. So we're gonna go. Oh, hang on 1 second. I gotta move the microphone. All right, let's try that. There we go. There we go. Okay, and one more thing. There we are. All right. Dope. Dope. Okay, so tomorrow, from 6 to 9 Western time, we'll just have the what I call the last minute question stream, in which we'll just go over stuff. We'll just chat about stuff. We can do some content review, maybe talk a little bit about other stuff. But yeah, it'll just be, pop in, say hi. You don't have to stay all 3 hours. That would be kind of crazy. Yeah, just kind of pop in, and I'll be here, and yeah, hopefully I will see you there. And yeah, this will be. I think I'm actually. This is the first one this one can actually stay on Twitch because it didn't have any big problems. So. Any cute, if you email me, I'll send you something. Yeah, no problem, Kyle. Glad I could help. Meggie, glad I could help. Kodzu, Badly, Bespoon, Awesome Sauce, Infamous, my new fan account. Thanks so much. Chesalai, glad I could help. Kyle, it wouldn't be the end of the stream if you didn't have a question, so go for it, yeah. Is it curved? I mean, there's always a curve. What's it going to be this year? That's anybody's guess. I could tell you what it was 2 years ago. I just can't tell you what it was last year or what it's going to be this year. But if I'm remembering the numbers correctly, and I could be totally wrong about this, but it was something along the lines of it was 60%, 50 to 60% was a 3, 70%, so like a C was a 4, and then 80% was a 5 or something like that. It's always like that. They always do that. Now, to be clear, let me say it again. That was 2 years ago. That was the data from 2 years ago. Oh yeah, school. Yeah, no, you should. If you're Doherty with me, then yeah, you're automatically excused. The attendance office takes care of that. You just go from the test to your what would it be? Your third period class? Yeah, you just go to your third period class. Yeah, there is a curve, which is interesting because there's a curve, but AP World is still one of the hardest AP exams. It has one of the lowest pass rates, which is really weird. Actually, you know what the hardest one is? It's really funny. You know what the hardest one is? It's AP Human Geo. Lowest pass rate. Lowest pass rate. Mainly because it's mostly freshmen that take it. Well, Kyle, I'm not very good at math, but I would say that, 85 of 40% is what? I don't know, it's 30 something? It's 32. So that'd be a 32%. And then DBQ is 40. DBQ is 30, SAQ is 30. So yeah, then assume you do half as well on those. 30 plus 15 plus 15 is 60. That's probably passing. But don't quote me on that, okay? Don't clip me on that. Thank you so much. Oh, to obtain a 5? Oh, that's a good question. You'd probably have to do pretty well. Yeah, so as I've been telling people with the MCQs, if you're clear in 50, you're doing fine. And if you're clear in 70, you're golden. Don't worry. 25? I thought it was 30. Oh, jeez. I sound so unprofessional. I don't even know this. Yeah, we don't have Human Geo at DV. No, we don't. They've talked about bringing it, but I don't think there's any room for it. Plus, it's really kind of the only teacher there who has any experience with that is Mr. Pont. He taught it for a while. Anywho's. Yeah. So, like I said, hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. Stream time on there on the screen thingy. Hopefully I'll see you all tomorrow. And yeah. Unit 3 to 6. Yeah, I think those 4 units together are about 80% of the exam. No, they're like 75% of the exam. Cool. All right. Good night.